Hey you, welcome back. As I'm sure you picked up from the title and the thumbnail, today we're going to be doing spooky season recommendations. I have some horror and I have some thrillers that I absolutely loved and I think are absolutely perfect for this time of year. So I am going to be in some sort of order today, which, that's crazy. Me? Going in order? But I'm going to be doing the thriller books that I have first and then the horror books that I have. And I'm sure you guys understand the difference, but if you don't understand the difference, a thriller book, according to Google, is a genre of fiction designed to elicit strong feelings of excitement, suspense, anxiety, and fear in the reader through a high-stakes, fast-paced plot with frequent twists and a sense of danger. For me, I kind of think of thrillers as like true crime. So basically like anything that could potentially actually happen in real life is like sorted into like the thriller category. And then the definition of horror on Google is a genre of speculative fiction designed to elicit strong emotions of fear, dread, and terror in a reader, often by exploring supernatural themes, macabre subjects, and psychological anxieties. So horror for me goes into the category of like the unseen and the supernatural, ghosts and monsters and like all of that stuff. All that aside, you guys probably did not need that explanation. We're going to start with the thriller books. Starting off with one of my favorite thrillers of all time, and it's also a cozy mystery, is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. We're following a group of people who have been mysteriously invited to a weekend, I believe, on this remote island. They don't know who sent them the invitation and none of them know each other. When all of them get to this remote island, they end up having dinner, but their host isn't there. And even the staff at the house has no idea. And starting on the first night, the guests begin to be picked off one by one. So this is like a whodunit type of book where you're trying to figure out who the murderer is. It's very fast paced. It is super short. It's only 264 pages long, so it's super short, very bingeable. I think I read this in like a day and a half, and that's fast for me because I'm a slow reader. I'm sure if you're a fast reader, you could binge this in one sitting. Like I said, this is one of my favorite thrillers of all time and my absolute favorite whodunit, and I highly recommend. The next thriller I have is That's Not My Name by Megan Lally. We have two POVs in this book. Our first POV, a girl wakes up on the side of the road and she has no idea where she is or even who she is. And so she ends up walking to the police station to get some help. While she's there and talking to an officer, a man comes into the police station claiming that he is her father. But again, she has amnesia, so she has no idea who this man is. She has no idea about anything. But this man has like photo IDs and a bunch of like different identifications for her. And so the police end up sending her home with this man. In our second POV, we're following a high school boy whose girlfriend has recently gone missing. He was the last person to see her, and so the town thinks that he murdered her. None of them have any evidence to back this up, but the police are convinced that it was him. Meanwhile, he's like, you guys need to stop looking at me because we need to investigate who actually did this and we have to find her. But nobody's listening to him, and so him and his two friends end up doing their own investigation and trying to find her. This is YA, but I still really enjoyed it. Both of the POVs were very exciting and it was very twisty and turny and like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? There was multiple times where I was listening to this and I just had to like stop and just solely listen, and I couldn't do anything else because I was like, oh my gosh, my heart was pounding so much. And the whole time I had no idea what was going to happen. I'm really sorry if you guys can hear my landlord weed whacking right now. The next book that I have for you is also YA, but don't let that deter you. It is Five Survive by Holly Jackson. We're following 6 teenagers who are going on a little camping trip together. So they all hop in an RV and they're headed to the campsite. They end up actually taking a wrong turn down this dirt road that's like super windy and like has a bunch of potholes, and it's just like really rough going, and it actually ends up being a dead end. And you know what happens when they get to the dead end? Of course, their engine dies.
I switched microphones because that weed whacker is so loud. I'm going to be
so mad if you guys can hear that on my other microphone. And hopefully this microphone is isolating it so you guys can't hear it at all. So anyways, yeah, their engine dies at the end of this dirt road. And not only that, but somebody starts shooting at them. There is literally a sniper in the pitch black of night in the middle of the woods shooting at them, and they have no idea where they are or who they are. So the whole book takes place on one night. We have some likable characters, we have some extremely unlikable characters, and we're trying to figure out who this gunman is and how they got into this situation. This is super spooky and scary. Again, the mystery element of this, like I could not figure out who the gunman was and like why he was doing this. So it had me on the edge of my seat and I didn't know what was going to happen. This is one of those books where you're just like screaming at the book because they're all like fighting, trying to like point fingers at each other and stuff. And you're just like, ah, but it was so good. Next up, we have another one of my absolute favorite thrillers, which is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. In this, we're following a married couple who's having a lot of marriage problems, and the wife ends up winning this getaway at her work, and the couple decides that they're going to go on this getaway and try to kind of fix their marriage on this getaway, and that if they can't fix their marriage on this getaway, that they're just going to get a divorce. But the getaway ends up being a stay in this very isolated church in the middle of literally nowhere where no one else is around. Like I'm pretty sure the only convenience store is miles away, like 20 miles away. The most random church. And when they get there, there is a huge blizzard. The roads are so bad. The snow is so deep. So they are snowed into this spooky old church like 20 miles away from any living human. And of course, some scary, spooky things start to happen. Once again, another one where I had not a single inkling about what the ending of this book was going to be. With most other thrillers, I have kind of at least like a few ideas of what might be happening. But for this one, I had no idea. I had theories and they were way off. If you don't pick this one up during spooky season, I highly recommend it for the winter because obviously it's a blizzard, but even for spooky season, this is so good. And the last book in my thriller category is Baby Teeth by Zoya Stage. We are following a family of 3, a mom, a dad, and a little girl who is 7. When the dad is home, this family is perfect and happy and wonderful, but the second the dad leaves for work, this little girl turns into an absolute monster for her mom. And not in the sense where it's like,
oh, well, the little girl's just the most comfortable with her mom, so she's obviously gonna act out a little bit with the mom.
No, she's like demonic. In the beginning of the book, she starts off with kind of like aggressive tantrums, and then slowly but surely she gets to the point where she's actually trying to hurt her mom. And she's having like genuinely evil and murderous thoughts about her mom. So great. So it's dual POV, so you get the daughter's POV, but also the mom's POV. Oh, and also to top it off, the dad does not believe the mom that this is happening at all. Wow, thanks so much, hubby. As a mom, this was truly so creepy, so gripping. I was actually terrified for the mom. This also has great, I think, autoimmune representation, or like, I can't remember exactly what, but like invisible kind of disease where it's like nobody knows that you have a disease, but it's very clearly weighing on you. So like that representation was really cool in this too. Okay, moving right along to horror. So this category is kind of broad because there's like a few different kinds of horror. Like there's horror mixed with like crime and horror mixed with like dark academia and things like that. So I'll just let you know as we go. But the first horror book that I have to recommend is a classic, and it's Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is like horror fantasy, and this is just literally the original Dracula story. We are following Jonathan Harker, who I believe is almost kind of like a real estate agent. This takes place in, when does this take place? It's obviously historical. I'm not sure when it it takes place, but I want to say like the 1800s. So he has to travel to Transylvania to meet with Count Dracula because Count Dracula would love to purchase a home in London, I believe it is, and he needs to sign paperwork and everything. So someone actually has to go out there to have him sign it, I guess. And right away, he notices how Count Dracula acts and how kind of strange he is. But he's like, whatever, it's fine. Until he is unable to leave the castle. And then back in London, miles and miles away, Jonathan Harker's wife is being haunted by these dreams of Dracula. I love this book so much. I will say that it is a little bit dense. It's like an older book, so the language in it is a little bit difficult to get used to. But once you do get used to it, this is so spooky and fun. I also highly recommend the audiobook for this one because I feel like that really helped me. I was going to say the language barrier. Not a language barrier, but like the difference in language. It really helped me with that. Absolutely the most perfect and atmospheric book for spooky season. Next up, we have one that I actually just reread because it's one of my favorites, and that is The Book Eaters by Sun Yi Dean. So this is kind of like horror fantasy. So in this world, there's kind of like these humanoid or like types of humans that eat books for their sustenance, but also when they eat the books, they gain the knowledge that's within the books. But book eaters can also produce what they call mind eaters, which is basically like the same type of humanoid thing as a book eater, except that they eat people's minds. And that is exactly what it sounds like. They literally have these long tongues and they literally stick their tongues in people's ears and literally suck out their brains. I know. It's so fun and cutesy. But whenever a mind eater is born, they are essentially taken away by this organization that kind of controls the mind eaters and almost uses them as like a weapon. So we're following this book eater mom who gives birth to a mind eater, and she refuses to allow her son to be taken. So she essentially goes on the run with her son and is trying to basically get away from the Knights, which is kind of like this almost like a government establishment that oversees the book eater families. They're also the ones that take the mind eater children and use them as weapons. So that is really just kind of scratching the surface of what this book is. So we're following the mom and the little boy as they try to escape these families and find a better life for themselves. I love this so much because it feels like it mixes like so many different elements. Like they're living in the modern world, but at the same time, the way that book eaters specifically live is almost kind of like similar in a way to like a Regency kind of era. And it's like fantasy and it's almost like cozy, but then there's like super intense horror situations. It just blends so many different things. I definitely suggest looking up trigger warnings for this because even for me, there are some things in this book that I really don't enjoy. It is a 5-star read for me because I just love everything else about it so much, but some of the horror elements are pretty horrific. Next up, we have Bunny by Mona Awad. This is dark academia and horror speculative fiction. In this, we are following Samantha, and she is in a cohort in college with a group of girls that are kind of like your stereotypical popular girl almost. It's just her and I believe these 4 other girls. These girls are in like this clique together, and so Samantha kind of feels like she's like on the outskirts of it. And all of these girls call each other Bunny. Samantha and her friend actually make fun of the bunnies all the time, but then one day the bunnies end up inviting her to their smut salon, which is essentially just a get-together where they talk about literature. And as much as Samantha doesn't want to be, she is drawn to this party. She ends up going, and from there, some wild and crazy things start to happen. Reality is heavily blurred in this book. So if you don't really like books where you have absolutely no idea what's going on, you might not like this book. And I will say, as I was reading this, I was like, I don't know if I like this. But as I was saying that, I was like smiling. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I like this. This is kind of weird. But I love this book so much. It is so weird, so strange. I highly, highly recommend going into this blind. That's what I did, and it made for an amazing experience. And again, I want to talk about the fact that you really don't know what's going on in this book. And even by the end of the book, you still don't know what just happened. So if you like books with like a resolution, like a solid resolution, you're not going to like this. There's so many different ways that you can interpret this book, and that's just one of the many things that I love about it. So this book isn't for everybody, like I've already said, but if you like very strange, spooky, and kind of like body horror-ish graphic, you might love this. Next, I want to talk about Starling House. I read this one last year around spooky season. This one is like, I would almost describe it as like urban horror. So we're in like the real world, but there's horror elements happening, especially at the end. So we're following this woman who lives in this town that's like very dilapidated, and like nobody likes to go there. It's like there's nothing there and everything is kind of like run down. But there is this one house in the town called Starling House that she passes every day on her way to and from work. And she's always been like inexplicably drawn to it because it's like this like Victorian type of house, and no one ever sees anybody go in and out, but there's like all of these town gossip and like spooky stories about this house. So she's just like so intrigued by it. And so one day she ends up actually just going up to the house, knocking on the door and asking to be the maid. And the guy who answers is like a grumpy guy, and he's like, I don't really need a maid. And she's like, please. Like for some reason, she just needs to be in this house. And so he agrees. And from there, some kind of interesting and weird things start to happen. A little bit of a romance blossoms. This also has the element of like the house itself having a mind of its own, which is also like a really fun trope that I love. This book is a little bit like slower paced, like a little bit languid, but at the end, it's pretty explosive, and I did not expect what was going to happen. Next, we have A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is a Dracula retelling. So kind of the same elements as Dracula, where it's like historical fantasy with like creatures like vampires and horror. Also, this definitely blends like lit fic. I would say this is lit fic horror. There really isn't a plot going on. Like the plot is very minor. In this, we're just following one of Dracula's brides throughout like hundreds of years. This one is also very short if you're looking for like a short read. I wouldn't exactly call it fast paced. I love this book so much because of the atmosphere of this. There's some amazing quotes in this. There's definitely like a creepy aspect to it. Some of this is like Dracula's bride essentially writing letters to Dracula. So we're kind of like following her through like the beginning of her life with Dracula, which is very like reminiscent of like the honeymoon stage. And then slowly but surely, she starts to kind of recognize Dracula for who he really is, and Dracula begins to take on other brides. So she's like forming relationships with the different brides. Another one that I just absolutely love so much and highly recommend. Next, we have another one that I actually just read as well, and that's We Used to Live Here by Marcus Clywer. In this, we're following a young couple who are house flippers, and so they end up buying this like old Victorian house that again is kind of like in a deserted kind of area. There's not a lot of people around. And so they've been there for like a few days or so when a family knocks on their door and tells them that they used to live there. Specifically, the dad of the family used to live there as a kid, and he wants to show his family around the house. And the woman's like, I don't know about this, but she's a people pleaser. So she's like, okay, like, I guess, like, if it's only going to be like 15 minutes. And the dad's like, yeah, it'll only be 15 minutes. Turns out it does not end up being just 15 minutes, and they are there for a very long time because things just keep happening and they just have to keep staying. Like, oh, it's a snowstorm. Oh, they their tire popped. Oh, you know what I mean? Again, I think this is really good to go into blind. This has a lot of different horror tropes in it. So if you love kind of like supernatural horror tropes, you would probably love this. It is very spooky. I was like looking over my shoulder as I was listening to it. I was thoroughly spooked. I wouldn't go into this thinking that like the plot or the writing is going to be perfect and amazing, but if you are looking for a book to creep you out, this is the one. And lastly, I want to recommend The Outsider by Stephen King. This is kind of like a crime horror. So this teenager is brutally murdered in this town, and we're following along this long police investigation to try and figure out who murdered him, like what happened. So we're seeing the perspective of like multiple different police officers in the story. The teenager's coach is actually like the main suspect, but he is adamant that he didn't do it. But everyone in the town is like saying that they saw him at the time of the murder. They saw him like buying certain like things that were suspicious. And he's like, I literally didn't do this. And then by the end of the book, we kind of get into like the horror elements. We start to realize that what we thought was going on is completely not it, and some supernatural elements begin to come out. If you're somebody who likes like crime novels and you want to dip your toes into horror, this would be the perfect transition for that. Those are all of my spooky season recs this year. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you found some books that you want to add to your TBR this fall. Now I absolutely need to know what your thriller and horror recs are down below so that I can add some to my TBR too. But until next week, guys, bye!